Go to sleep, may your sweet dreams come true. Just lay back in my arms for one more night. I've this crazy old notion that calls me sometimes, saying this one's the love of our lives. 'Cause I know a love that will never grow. And I know a love that will never grow. When you wake up, the world may have changed, but trust in me, I'll never falter or fail. Just a smile in your eyes, it can light up the night. And your laughter's like wind in my sails. 'Cause I know a love that will never grow. And I know a love that will never grow. Lean on me, let our hearts beat in time. Feel strength from the hands that have held you so long. Who cares where we go on this rutted old road? In a world that may say that we're wrong. And I know a love that will never grow. And I know a love that will never grow. So here we are, back in the podcast. That song was A Love That Will Never Grow Old, and it's Emmylou Harris who sang it. And it was from the movie Brokeback Mountain. It was a great song, great movie. But what do we got here? I'll just start my intro in a sec. Hola, ni hao, kamusta. Privyet, Jambo, bonjour, hello. Welcome to Couple Podcast number 12. In 2 weeks, I hope to make it a baker's dozen. I'm David Gerard and will be your host this evening. Brother Dave is not here today again. He's off to do some research, and I see his itinerary is sitting on the desk. Bon voyage, Dave. That damn COVID is still fighting dirty. But the leader south of the border, who sometimes wishes to remain anonymous, continues to share his wisdom, which obviously doesn't come with the position that no one's asked for his wisdom yet. And as they say, little hands, little wisdom. Or as I say, he's blessed with plenty of wisdom and wisdomer. Okay, we're going to start at 1964 and going to it was that summer we visited Salt Spring, and then we moved there in the fall. So this part's summer at Lakeridge. I knew Gary Hagan from the summer of '64 when my family stayed for a couple of weeks on Salt Spring Island. Dad was working, so we had lots of time to mess around during the day. We stayed in an old shack at Lakeridge, aka Bullock Lake Estates. It was owned and operated by the Lowe family, Ernie and Brenda, and their children Gail, Joan, Christy, and Mark. They were kind hosts, and Mark and I got along great and mostly stayed out of trouble. Gary lived in the gatehouse with his mother Jackie, his dad Larry, and 3 sisters, Becky, Juanita, and Geraldine. When all 3 of us played together, the boys that is, there was a fair chance we were going to get into some sort of trouble. Now I'd like to play the sympathy card. Gary is the eldest of his family, and Mark was the youngest of his family, and I was smack dab in the middle of 4 girls. I don't know who had it worse, but I had 4 sisters, and they had only 3 sisters each. Being the only boys meant that we were orphans in our own families. So when we got together, we tried to make the best of it. One thing that set that property apart was Bullock Lake. During the summer, the water was a pleasant temperature for swimming, and the lake was stocked with fish. Even though I caught my first fish in that lake, I came to realize that fishing wasn't my passion. Years later, I still didn't care for it, and I was a jinx. And no more often than not, we would catch more skunks than fish. One thing that has always been a vivid memory of mine is when Gail would train for swimming in the lake. I can't remember what trials or competitions she trained for, but boy, could she ever motor. When I saw her swimming the butterfly, I was amazed, as it was the first time I'd seen anyone do it. She was a great swimmer. One day, Gary and I were playing Follow the Leader, as kids do. Gary and Mark were first and second to lead. We went past the pigsty and into the barn. We were standing on hay bales that came up to the bottom of one of the side openings. We wore either shorts or swimming trunks and shoes. They said, "You should jump out and run to the fence, or are you a scaredy cat?" So I jumped and ran fast through a bunch of tall plants that didn't put up much resistance. Mark and Gary were in the barn, and they were laughing like crazy. I started getting real itchy, and they walked up to me to meet me. By the time they reached me, I was getting very uncomfortable and could see bumps and welts all over myself. They looked at me and asked, "Does it hurt a lot?" "Yes," I said. They said, "Wow, you have the rash as well? And some people die from it." I started screaming and crying and said, "I'm going to tell my dad right away because he might have to take me to the hospital." They calmed me down and said they were just BSing. But boy, did it hurt. We then hightailed it off to the lake and went for a long swim. When I got back to the shack for supper, I was still covered in a rash. And Dad asked, "What happened?" I said, "I found out where not to go, and that would be through a patch of stinging nettles." Dad had a bit of a chuckle over that one. Why was I the only one that thought it wasn't funny? The big move. We moved to Salt Spring Island at the beginning of September, just in time for me to start grade 2. The first day at school was hectic. I was one of the new kids on the block and figured there would be some kind of hazing. Not long after I got off the bus, a kid challenged me to a fight. There were 3 rules: no hitting in the face, no kicks to the nuts, and when someone yelled, "Uncle," the battle is over. Pretty much wrestling. The fight began and lasted less than a minute when I managed to get my opponent in a half Nelson, and he said the magic word. I didn't have a fight in kindergarten or grade 1, and now I have my first school fight, and it had occurred before I even set foot inside the school. I felt a little bit lost because I was one of 3 or 4 newbies, and there was still a lot of social posturing in store before I would find my place in the pecking order. That morning, we went through the usual first morning of the first day of school stuff. I liked my teacher, Mrs. Severn, as she had a pleasant disposition, and the cherry on top was that she wasn't in the habit of wearing a nun's habit. Lunchtime had finally arrived. Gary took me under his wing, and we began a custom of seeing what each other had for lunch. Then the bartering began in earnest. No sooner had we started when Carl Kitchen joined the fray. Gary quickly introduced me to Carl as we were swapping sandwiches, fruit, and whatever else, and it only took a minute to conclude, and the feeding frenzy was on. I noticed that my lunch had morphed into something totally unrecognizable from the original. I wonder if our mums knew what we were up to, and if our sisters were doing the same. I never asked. We had just finished eating, and Carl said, "My neighbor is up next." I replied, "Next? What do you mean?" Carl said, "You're going to fight David Coopsey in a few minutes. So you're behind all of this?" I asked him, and Gary pipes up, "Both of us are." "Don't tell me that you set up another one for after school because I have a bus to catch," I said. "Fortunately, we do too." Okay, it's fight time, Gary said. This time, it took a few more minutes for another victory, and David had put up a good fight, almost too good. Once we caught our breath, we managed to get in a good talk. I liked David, and I wished I hadn't fought him. To this day, I still consider Gary and Carl as good friends, even though they kind of set me up. Gary is half Black Irish, and the rest, if I have it right, is Hawaiian, First Nations, and English. I'm half Scottish, half French, and I don't give a damn all the time. Carl is the only one of us who wasn't all mixed up. He is entirely Native Indian, or nowadays First Nations. That year we had a show and tell for our parents, and I did a balance beam routine, and the guys were teasing me about it. I noticed that they all struggled during practice. Not one of the other guys did the routine, but did they ever tease me about it? When the demonstration was over, I said, "The balance beam seems to be a big challenge for you guys, so I'm willing to stay behind if you want some help." Dead silence. Another grade 2 event was the oratorical competition held in Mann Hall for all elementary students. I don't know what possessed me to enter the contest. Maybe it was because I hadn't done it before. We were told to study what we were interested in and then write about it. Also, not to copy word for word from texts or any printed materials. If you broke the rules, you would get plagiarism or something. I didn't like the sound of that. So I got an idea and took 2 different books and copied some out of each of them until I had what I needed. Easy peasy. Then I realized it was off book, so I had to commit it all to memory. Fortunately, memorization was something that came quickly to me. Just give it 1 sec here. Forgot to change those. There we go. Now, something else I was thinking about. I'm right in the middle of this thing too. Oh, I wanted to get a sip of tea. No. Okay. So for the oratorical contest, it was the night of the competition. We were waiting in the wings. The younger kids go earliest, so it wasn't long before our turn. I was confidently nervous, and the first of the grade twos got the call. I was third in the queue, and the first was up. She started clear and confident, but somehow something went wrong, and then it escalated. She ran off in tears before she could finish her speech. So when the two of us were up, and I thought, how do you follow something like that? At least this other girl would go first and allow me time to compose myself. Well, wouldn't you know it, the other girl fell apart, started bawling and refused to go on stage, so there was a lot of tears and compassion going around. All I could think of was to create a lot of separation between me and the situation. Then I got a tap on the shoulder. All right, David, you're up. Can I just go home and do it next year? I begged. No, let's get it over with. So I entered the stage, walked up to the podium, and if I remember, there was no microphone, so you had to speak loud and clear. I stood there for a couple of seconds, probably even more, and it seemed like an eternity, trying to remember what my speech was about. And then it came to me. I said, elephants. Elephants are the largest living land mammals, and then spewed off the rest of it. I tried not to look at the crowd because I might see my parents or some of my friends who would be trying to make me laugh by making faces and such. Then I remembered someone saying to focus on the back wall above the crowd. So I tried it. But I must have been looking a little too high because my neck was getting real sore. I was so nervous and stressed, yet somehow managed to at least finish the speech. The audience was kind enough to applaud, and I got off the stage and outside as quickly as I could. While standing in the parking lot, kicking rocks and dirt, an overwhelming sense of peace washed through me. I am never going to do public speaking again. Never was almost 4 decades. Wonderful experience for me. And just give me 1 second here. Why didn't it go? That's for some reason, I'm having a little bit of a problem here, but I'm sure I can figure it out. Let's go to this. That'll work for now. Okay. Oh, yes. I should check. Oh, there we go. Just checking the comments. Lynn, good evening. Good evening from Winnipeg, David. Claudette. Lynn Cunningham, agreed. Lynn Cunningham, Mark Lowe. Jill, I got it. Oh God, I forgot about that, the oratorical contest. Public speaking, my definition of torture. I'd rather be shot from a cannon. Love it. Claudette, haha. Were you part of the same oratorical event as David? Maybe not. Who knows? I hope you weren't the one that was crying and left the stage, but I don't think so. That was great too. So I don't know if you were there then. But yes, there we go. Now we're all up to speed. Okay. Now, on Salt Spring, we didn't have any ice in the winter for playing hockey. Although, let me just renege on that a little bit. Some winters we did get ice on the ponds and lakes, and we skated around and stuff like that. Played a bit of hockey, but it was never enough, to actually have a league or anything like that. So what we did instead was we played roller hockey in the Fulford Hall. And when I started playing roller hockey, I'd never skated before. By the end of the season, I was getting the hang of it, and I won a trophy for most sportsmanlike player. I think I won it because I couldn't catch up to anyone to get a penalty. One thing I didn't like about hockey was that Carl was on a different team than Gary and I, because he was such a good player. The best in our age group by a Salt Spring mile. All games were played in the Fulford Community Hall. Teams would include 3 skaters, a goalie with standard hockey rules. 3 skaters and a goalie with standard hockey rules. There were about 4 different leagues determined by age group, with 3 teams per league. North End, Ganges, and Fulford. Carl always played for Fulford, and Gary and I played for Ganges. It wasn't unusual for me to go home after a game, and Dad asked me how the game went, and I would say, the usual. He asked, did you score any goals? Yes, I scored 3. Wow, a hat trick, that's great, he said to me. What was the score? 21-4. And the kitchens were hot. Carl got 10 goals, his younger brothers Roger scored 5, and Philip scored 2. So that was, kind of negated, the hat trick or whatever. But and I never did say this, but I don't think I wrote this in there. But one year we finally won. We won the league. But that's when Gary and I were big enough to really hurt people, especially Gary. I stayed overnight at Carl's a few times and would take my skates and stick with me. We would play for hours, and Carl showed me the ropes. He was really good at that, and pass it on. He lived on Morningside Drive, which is close to the Fulford Ferry Terminal. We would walk on the dirt road to the pavement at the ferry terminal. Then it was off with the shoes, on with the skates, tie the shoes together, drape them around our necks, and pass a tennis ball back and forth as we skated from Fulford to Fulford Hall, while dodging traffic. We practiced in the hall most of the time, but once in a while we would go down to the nearby Fulford Creek. There are fish in the creek and lots of frogs, birds, and sometimes deer. The fun part was old logs or new windfalls spanning the creek. I could never resist walking across. When we had our fill with the stream, it would be back up to the hall and practice some more. Now this is I'm sure everyone goes through this, but we were kind of young to go through this one. But anyhow, one time 6 or 8 of us were cleaning up the hall after a function from the night before. We worked quickly to clean up and put all the chairs and tables away because we wanted to, start playing hockey. While we were cleaning up, a very diligent individual poured all the contents of the leftover drinks into 2 one-gallon jugs. It smelled awful and tasted even worse, but we persevered and finished them off. And they finished us off. Soon we were intoxicated and staggering all over, just a bunch of 9 and 10-year-old boys being boys. It took Carl and I what seemed forever to walk the 2 kilometers back to his house. And we became intimate with a few of the ditches along the way. When we got back to Carl's, his mom wasn't impressed when she saw us. Fortunately, Carl's older brother Rick had gone before us, so his mom was a bit more lenient than she would have been. One sec. The reserve. One time during the summer, Carl, Gary, and I went camping for a couple of days on the reserve situated just off the end of Morningside Drive. I got a little spooked because they were talking about the spirits that protect the reserve and all the animals in it. I managed to keep a calm demeanor about me. The first night was a bit creepy, but okay the rest of the time. We got some oysters and were lucky enough to catch a big crab. We also rustled up some berries and apples and baked the oysters and boiled the crab. A meal fit for the three amigos. On the way back home, we decided to do the blood brother thing. We each had knives, and luckily mine was very sharp. The hardest part for me was to make that cut, and the rest was a formality. 3 boys returning from a camping trip, all with minor hand injuries. And I know Jill doesn't eat oysters, so anyhow. This one's called Shucks No. At the age of 9, me and some friends of mine slipped quickly through the trees like a spirit breeze to appear at the motionally charged ocean whose tide was at low ride. So all that remained was sand, rock, and sea life drained of briny. Let's build a fire quick, and the harvest we must pick, as it sleeps in beds exposed to the will of 9-year-olds, who gather them up, ready to shuck. So we'll open them up slow. Shuck, no. Toss them in the fire, and let it do all the work, because cooking and hissing and spitting, they will open slowly to reveal the best seaside sup of cooked oysters in the shell with the aromatic tell of an oyster, ocean, and wood fire potion. Like the smell of freshly mown grass, it's something that will forever last. Okay, I'm just gonna see if I can sort this out. Sorry, I'm still trying to get this, I think it's 5. Yeah. So how did I do it that way? Oh, I know. Come on. There we go. Okay, this song is called Hard Times Come Again No More. These, in the picture that you should be seeing, I think, these ladies, it was when I was in Kenya, and I took the pictures and I didn't really think about the hardship they were going through because I was there in that particular place and everyone was sort of going through hardship, but theirs was a little more than most. Anyhow, let's see, where are we? Oh yeah, here we go. Oops. Let us ourselves in His spirit and we have tears. Oh, Tyler. Sorry. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many a days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. While we seek mirth and beauty and music light and gay, there are frail forms fainting at the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading looks will say, oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many a days you have lingered all around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. The song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many a days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. So many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. Making all the noise now. Okay. So I'll leave that picture up for a while. I kind of like it, and it just reminds me that some people are really struggling. Oops. Sorry, just having a bit of a brain fart here. There we go. So, where are we now? Centennial year, 1967. The landscape in town changed a lot over the years. People decided to make real estate, and I guess people let them. Landfill and rocks were dumped in the harbor on both sides of the causeway. Centennial Park on one side, and a big parking lot, a big grocery store, and some businesses on the other side. The cenotaph was moved from the middle of a three-way intersection and placed in Centennial Park. How did it go down? Here, I have a bunch of fill to get rid of, so I'll dump it in the harbor and make it fit the area required for my new business. I'll give you a great deal because I won't charge you for the material or equipment time. Yeah, well, whatever. When it was all said and done, it's the harbor, hasn't been filled in much more since then, which is a good thing. What else happened? I'm pretty sure that's the same year that Harry Jerome came to our school, the elementary school, for the sports day. So he got to see some of the people run, and he did a speech, and we were all flabbergasted, of course. Oh wow! But he did mention, and I'll never forget that, he did mention how well Rick Kitchen ran, and especially on the backstretch of one of the races, he just effortless. So there you go, Rick, if you're still around. Let's see, Scouts. One year we were in Sea Scouts. Our leader told us he quit, and I guess a bunch of us kind of sort of forgot to tell our parents. Most of us were dropped off by our parents. So Gary and I would arrive early to open up because we lived close. The easiest way to enter was to climb through an unlatched back window. Once inside, the lights got turned on, the doors unlocked to make everything look kosher. Then we got all the sports equipment out and had a blast until the parents arrived, and we put everything back, turned the lights out, and shut the doors. It lasted a few weeks until some of the parents finally caught on, but it was well worth it. Soccer. Aside from hockey, we played all the sports. Soccer, basketball, volleyball, and track and field. Make one team, you make them all. When you live on a small island. My favorite sport was soccer. I was reasonably good at it, scored most of my goals in the air, and had ample endurance for a 90-minute game. Our most successful year was grade 7, when we won every game and had no goals scored against us. Our diamond in the rough was our coach, Alan Marsh, who had played pro football in the UK. He had us practice in any weather. One of his rules was that if a ball came to your left side, take it with your left foot or boot or whatever, and vice versa. So whatever side it goes to, you take it on that side. If you didn't, the consequences were that your offending boot, usually the right, because most people were right-footed or whatever, was moved until the end of practice and would force you to play with your left foot. I could already use both feet and would have a chuckle when the offender had to hobble around in one boot. The success in soccer sure took some sting out of the hockey losses. Now I got it's kind of a I suppose some of it ocean themed anyhow. So this is just a quick haiku. Motions of oceans, innately tied with the tides. crashes against the cliffs. I love them, they're so short. Quotes. We are the architects of our own prison. Depression is the arsonist of hope and assassin of dreams. Yup. A test of metal merits metal. Go with your gut or vomit. Reverence or irreverence may be a dilemma for me, but reverence I must test for irreverence to be. Oh, one more. The sight are blind to the insight of the blind. Okay, I just want to check here again quickly, if I can find it. Yeah, it was a year, but I didn't think Jill had been there. She said it was a year before she came there. Yeah. Oh my God, blood sisters and brothers. That's Lynn. You're right. Oysters are only good for bait to catch proper fish. That's Jill. Veronica, Cecily. Sounds tasty, like oysters. But it's snot. David's favorite saying when shucking oysters, or Dad's favorite saying when shucking oysters. Jill, hey David, are you a Pete Seeger fan? Your voice reminds me of his a bit. He's my all-time favorite male voice. Grew up listening to the Weavers. Cool. Yeah, I think Steve Pello mentioned that too. I'll have to see what this guy sounds like. So true, imagine what we lost. Yes, Harry Jerome and all the Kitchens were amazing athletes. Navy, class, cream puffs, Confederation train. Oh yeah, I forgot about all that. My memory's not quite that good. But let's see here. I do 4 rounds. Okay. So, anyone that went to school on Salt Spring prior to grade 7 or even grade 7 would know about this big, huge play that was put on. And I'll just mention how we got into the play. Sometimes Gary and I would get into a bit of trouble. Yep. In grade 7, we got caught doing something wrong, probably something petty, like smoking cigarettes. We were well past the stage of denial and would go right into, okay, what's the punishment? The teacher that caught us was Mr. Ford, who taught drama. He was smart enough to see he had a golden opportunity staring him right in the face. He worked on us until we agreed to act in the play. And I still can't believe he managed to do it. The play was Cinderella. And our first practice was after school. Practice? That sounds like homework, and I never did homework. Not fair. And to add insult to injury, we find out that there was more than one practice, actually 4 or 5. We weren't even allowed to shoot hoops during practice. Practice was at the Mann Hall. When showtime came around, the entire cast was standing outside the high school gymnasium, waiting for the call to enter stage left to a full house. Charles Warren, Gary, and I were at the back of the line. 3 very nervous guys complaining that our feet hurt, our legs were cold, our scalps itchy, and we were worried about losing or popping a balloon. We finally filed in, and we were the last to enter. The entire audience erupted in laughter to bring the house down. Charlie was the ugly stepmother, and Gary and I the ugly stepsisters. We had high heels on, dresses, balloon boobs, nylons, wigs, jewelry, full makeup. I think we probably looked like a couple of drunken loggers dressed in drag, and whenever we moved or spoke our entire 2 lines, which, we would ham it up to get the audience laughing. And of course, we would sit daintily with our legs spread wide apart. Every once in a while, we accidentally, on purpose, smear a bit of the makeup. We paraded off to a standing ovation. I guess our parents were happy we got caught smoking because they were watching. And Valerie Knowles' parents took a video of it, and I wonder if it's still out there somewhere, because I'd love to see it, or a copy of it. So if anyone knows about it, let me know. This next one here is... Excuse me. Deadman's Island. A few of my friends and I talked about going to Deadman's Island. No one seemed to know for sure why it was called Deadman's, but there was undoubtedly a lot of speculation and theories hanging from the grapevine. Finally, one day, the stars aligned. Good weather and a minus tide, which was needed for us to walk high and dry across the exposed sandbar that connects Grace Point to the island. 5 or 6 were we, all at the age of 9. And I will refer to us as we, or we as us from now on. We took with us very little in the way of supplies: pocket knives, matches, and a few sticks of gum. The journey began in front of Mowat's store as we walked past Bill's taxi office and up and over Grace Point to the sandbar. At that time, Grace Point was in a natural state with grass, junipers, and some Gary oaks. So across the sandbar we walked, buoyed by the adventure that awaits. We stepped foot on the island for the very first time and agreed to meet later at the far end of the island. And like a close-knit group, or a well-oiled machine, we dispersed willy-nilly in all directions. I went down to the beach and explored a couple of caves, and they weren't very big. One had 2 chambers, an upper and lower. I was hoping to find a human skeleton or a lot of treasure. I learned years later that they were most likely abandoned otter dens. No wonder they smelt terrible. Disappointingly, there wasn't much of anything on that small island. We were expecting to find Deadman's grave with some of his bones sticking out from the dirt. There weren't even any deer or stowaway cougars to add an element of danger on the trek. We agreed there was probably a couple of deer before we got there, but a cougar swam over, invited them to dinner. The cougar ate the deer dinner, and a couple of days later, he left because the larder was empty. True story. When we met at the far end of that small island, we got to work starting a fire and gather some seafood bounty. We got a bunch of oysters. There you go, Jill, more oysters. And snuck up on a large Dungeness crab and managed to grab it by the back legs and held on for dear life. We knew that we would bake the oysters in the fire, but what to do with the crab? We didn't have a pot to boil it in and thought about trying to cook it in the fire. Still, none of us had ever tried that. And with our luck, we would throw it in the fire and it would scamper out all covered in coals and burn the island down. We decided instead to sentence it to life in the ocean, we tossed it back in the water. As usual, the oysters were excellent. We hung around on the beach, eating and relaxing after a stressful day. A couple of the guys were saying how thirsty they were, so we doused the fire and headed back over the island to discover that the sandbar had not moved. But it was covered with 4 or 5 feet of briny. At first, it seemed easy, and we'll just swim back. But the unexpected appeared, and one of us couldn't swim. Let's call him Sink. We huddled up and knew that we couldn't leave him unless we had access to a boat. So it was simple. He's coming with us. Me and another one of the wees decided to swim back with Sink between us, holding on to our shoulders. We told Sink that he should kick like us because if he didn't, his legs would go vertical and Sink would have to have his name changed to Sunk. It was a bit of a challenge for all 3 of us, and we gave credit to Sink because he didn't sunk. He came close to swimming near the end and could swim by the end of the summer. We got to the other side and walked back across Grace Point into town and dispersed in different directions. A couple of days later, we found out that we weren't even on Deadman's Island because there is a chain of 3 islands further out of the harbor called Deadman's Islands. At first, we were really bummed out because Grace Islet, as it's now called, didn't sound even remotely as exciting as Deadman's Island. But then we realized that was the reason we didn't find treasure, skeletons, or cougars. The other bonus is that now we have 3 islands with the right name to explore. How to get there? None of us had a boat. Put it in the back burner for a few years. And in the meantime, I got a poem here. Oh, I'm running late. Running real late. Okay, well, I'll do this poem. I guess I'm having too much fun. It's called Depth Conception. Shallow is the depth of my faith, abandoned, separated, and trapped. Tidal pool of a summer's day, infernal sun, fever pitch heat, evaporate, dissipate, disperse, or survive to be lapped up, swallowed, and tempered by the tide. Mingle, disperse, journey offshore into the vast expanse of sea. Cool, awesome abyss of faith. Go past golf balls, backside, go past that. Yeah, I think that's enough. So, I'm gonna finish with a song, and then I'll say goodbye. The song is, you better not announce it until I can find it here. The song is When It Comes My Turn, and it's written by David Myles. He's got a good first name anyhow. Let's check here. Things aren't doing what I want them to do. Just bear with me for a second. If I... There we are. I'm getting old, but I'm not old yet. I'm already worried that I might forget how to laugh, how to love, how to live, how to learn. I want to die with a smile when it comes my turn. I don't want to get weary, don't want to get bored. Don't want to get tired walking down this road. Seen it happen so many times. Just got to believe it's still worth trying. I know, but I'm not old yet. I'm already worried that I might forget how to laugh, how to love, how to live, how to learn. I want to die with a smile when it gets my turn. When it's easier said than done, and I ain't that different from anyone. Worry about my money. Got bills that I can't pay. I swear I'm more like my father every day. Well, I'm getting old, but I'm not old yet. I'm already worried that I might forget how to laugh, how to love, how to live, how to learn. I want to die with a smile when it comes my turn. Then the instrumental. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll start bowling, maybe I'll play bridge, maybe I'll join a band with my own grandkids. I don't care if it kills me, I'm gonna do what it takes to keep some warmth in my heart and a smile on my face. I'm in love, not old yet. I'm already worried that I might forget how to laugh, how to love, how to live, how to learn. Want to die with a smile when it comes my turn. I'm getting old, but I'm not old yet. I'm already worried that I might forget how to laugh, how to love, how to live, how to learn. Want to die with a smile when it comes my turn. Want to die with a smile when it comes my turn. Okay, so we are about to say goodbye. I'll look at the comments later. Let's see if I can get this to work now. Yeah, it worked there. So, that's it. We'll be back in another 2 weeks' time. And, yeah. Have fun, everyone. See you in a couple of weeks.